Yo, what is up, duelists? Jared here. This past weekend, I had the Philadelphia Regional. I just got back recently, and I wanted to show you guys what I was playing. I think it was very interesting. There was a lot of good theory here, and I have not played Sky Striker in a very long time, and I think it was very nice getting back into the reins again to be able to play a deck like this that I love so much, and to actually make it playable for the format. For those who are wondering about my performance, I was technically undefeated until the last round, and then I've lost finally the last round. I had 3 draws going into the last round. 2 of those draws could have been wins if I played better. It was my own fault. I just had been a while since I played the deck, and I just made minor misplays that ended up screwing me in the end, so that I couldn't get the win in the clinch moment that I needed it. So yeah, that's that. And overall, I'm going to go through the deck. I'm going to tell you guys the theory behind it and why it worked and how it worked and why it worked so well. So yeah, so we're just going to jump right into the deck and tell you about how everything went. So obviously we were playing 3 Ray. This is pretty standard. There's nothing really special about it. Then we also played 3 copies of Rose. So the reason we played 3 copies of Rose was because we need to see a Sky Striker monster to play every time. Even in my old Sky Striker videos that I made forever ago, this was still a thing. I was still playing this just because I needed to be able to play. If I could play, I could at least feel like I had a chance to win most of the time. And that holds true even to today. When I was playing my opponents, I always felt like the deck did what it needed to do, and I was always able to out what they had, even in this current format. And Triple Rose was super helpful for that. And to think that the second effect of Rose wouldn't come up is just not true. Rose's second effect come up actually quite a bit for me, I should say. I was able to destroy a lot of Predaplant Birthday Anacondas, Monk of the Tenyis, and yeah, it was always coming up for me. So yeah, I would definitely. I personally like 3, but obviously a lot of builds are playing 2. And then we do play 2 copies of the Destiny Hero monsters for the Destiny Hero package that we were playing, of course, because we want something to apply pressure to our opponent, and Destroy Phoenix Enforcer is really, really good for that. And it constantly makes interrupts and doesn't contradict with your Sky Striker spells being set on the field for your opponent's turn. Also, just as a bonus factor, these are all the monsters that I'm playing. So this means that I'm playing 0 hand traps in the main, and I am also playing 0 hand traps in the side. This is something that's very unique, this format. I don't feel like a lot of decks are doing it. Even the Despia decks are playing hand traps. This deck was playing 0. This is a blind going second Sky Striker every time. You never want to go first. But yeah, so this is it for all the monsters, just 8 monsters. I think that's all you need, to be honest, for a build like this. Going into the spells, I'm going to go through all the Striker spells. 1 copy of Engage, just because it's at 1. 1 copy of Multi-Roll, because it's at 1. And 1 copy of Hornet Drones, because it's at 1. And then moving forward, we have the Quick Play spells. 2 copies of Eagle Booster. I know this is a card that not a lot of people play, but when I say this card came up for me a lot when at the event, this card came up for me a lot. There was multiple instances where I used Fusion Destiny, it got Ash Blossomed, and then I either used Shark Cannon or Widow Anchor to get a second monster on my side of the field, make Predaplant Verte Anaconda, and then linked into Predaplant Verte Anaconda, right, and then used the effect, and then it was either hit with some kind of interruption, whether when it was summoned, they used Conquistador, if it was Effect Veiler, Impermed, even Mirror Jade. There was a million things that people tried doing to it, and then to be able to Eagle Booster it, and then just still resolve the effect anyway, guaranteed, and then to get DPE, and then getting these in the graveyard is such a huge power play, and it does so many things for the deck. Obviously, you don't have to play this card, but for me, this weekend, this card worked absolutely phenomenal, and I could not recommend it enough. Other cards that worked phenomenal for me was 3 copies of Shark Cannon. This card is crazy. I will never understand how I look at builds recently, and I see 2 of this card. This card beats Brandon in red. Is there any more that has to be said? Brandon is everywhere. You cannot stop playing against Despia. And you need to be able to stop cards like Brandon in red to be able to push through, because cards like Guardian Chimera are a pain in the ass. So Shark Cannon is super, super good for that. And you take their monster for a link climb. And the amount of times I've taken just amazing cards with this is ridiculous. I have taken so many Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcers. I beat a Phantom Knight player with his own Lancia with this card. Like, this card is nuts. I do not understand how this is a 2 of in anybody's deck. So I would highly recommend playing 3 of this card in any build of Sky Striker. I think it's just ridiculous. And then, of course, you have the 3 copies of Widow Anchor for the best interruption, being able to take control of opponent's monsters and negate them. This is pretty straightforward. I'm not even going to explain that one. For the less impactful Sky Striker cards, we have 2 copies of Afterburners that I played. This was mostly for back row decks, I would say, and it's very good against something like the Mirror Jade that Despia makes, just because you can just clear it and no problems. Yeah, they activate it in graveyard, but what ends up happening is that you just have Ray on the field, and you can just, or let's say you like leave Kagari on the field, you add it back, Mirror Jade resolves, you just special back Ray, use Ray in the end phase, and then you get Shizuku anyway, and it never really mattered in the first place. So you can clear their board quite easily, and then still be able to get the advantage that you're going to get anyway. But yeah, Afterburn is just generically a good card. Going second, obviously, it's amazing. And then for Sword Soul, you can destroy, whatever. It baits out Interruption every time just because it's just a 1-for-1 trade, and you don't care because you're getting a spell in the grave. So it's just something that overall I think was a great card for me. And then the last 2 Sky Striker spells I played was 2 copies of Area Zero. I didn't want to draw too many field spells. That was an issue I was having previously with the deck. So I kind of confined it down to a certain amount of field spells. And 2 for Area Zero just ended up working the best for me, but I do play more field spells later on in this list. And then for non-Sky Striker spells that I played, 1 Reinforcement of the Army, gets Ray and Rose, so, I mean, yeah, it's a good card. 2 copies of Fusion Destiny. Obviously, I'm playing Destiny or Phoenix Forcer, as I said, card's crazy. This was 3 copies of Pot of Prosperity. I borrowed them. I do not have them anymore, but this was 3 copies of Prosperity. I am very iffy on this card. I really didn't like it that much. Not because of the banishing effect from the extra deck. I really don't care about that. There was never a time where the banish from the extra deck was screwing me. I didn't like this card because I couldn't draw. Not drawing is very annoying. Like, there was times where I Prosperity, and then later in the turn I was able to engage and try to go for a draw, but I couldn't. There was also times in the tournament where I drew double Prosperity, and it's super annoying. I hate seeing it. Or you draw into it late game, and it's just like you want to engage, but then you draw Prosperity, and it's like, well, they don't really do anything together. So this is just something I did not like personally, but I feel like it's a necessary evil in the deck because consistency reasons, and it's better than playing the 1-up start, right? And then, or you have to play something like Foolish Burial Goods in that package, and that's just more consistency issues. So Prosperity is kind of just the best for reasons like that, for consistency mostly. But overall, I wish that this could be something else, but right now we just don't have that something else in the game. It's the best way I could put it. And then we're going to be going on to more like going second cards. We did play 3 copies of Forbidden Droplet. This card is insane because you play so many quick play spells, obviously. You are able to just chain cards on top of cards and then send them away with Droplet to negate an entire board and bait out interruptions. So obviously this card is just ridiculous. It has come up so much. Even the attack half is super relevant because there's times where you can Forbidden Droplet, let's say a Baron the floor, and it becomes 1500 attack. You can summon something like Hayate with off of Ray, crash into the Baron DeFlora, the Hayate still activates to be able to send something like Ray, or you can just have Ray engrave already and send something like Engage, bring back the Ray, then you can either hit directly or use Ray immediately to tag out Gagari to then beat over another problematic monster that was already on the field that you may have also negated with droplets. So there's a lot of ways you can get a lot of value with this deck, and situations like that actually came up more than you would think, where I was crashing Hayates in and taking a trade to get Ray back to then either attacking directly or beating something over, and then taking a different trade and tagging on something else. Like, destroying by battle was a huge thing in this deck, surprisingly, but overall, this is a super, super good card. I did play 2 copies of Triple Tactics Talents. This card was at 3, and I was having the same problem I was having with Prosperity, where I kept drawing multiples of it, and it was just awful. So I wanted to be able to make sure my hands were as live as possible, where I could play all 5 or 6 cards at all times. So what I did was I took one of the talents out and I played 1 Forbidden Chalice. This was just to help me break boards. It was kind of a pain to break certain boards, and I wanted another interruption, something like Widow Anchor, to be able to stop their plays. So Forbidden Chalice was very good for me. I don't think it was great. I only played it that once, so I didn't see it too many times, but when I did see it, it was very okay. One of my Sword Soul, my last loss of the day, was only because I lost a 50-50 shot on a Vashuda. He Vashuda'd back the Widow Anchor and not the Forbidden Chalice. And if it was the other way around, I would have won. So, I mean, again, it's just unlucky, but overall, it was fine. I wish that this could be a 4th Widow Anchor, but obviously it can't. So this is just fine how it is, I guess. But if you want to play 3 talents, feel free, by all means. And then lastly, for like going second, amazing quick play spell is a Call by the Grave. Again, this is just another copy of Shark Cannon, just because you were able to banish things off of Brandon and Raid, plus stopping hand traps, Vashudas, Ashunas, all the Tenyu cards. There's a million cards this card's really good against, especially right now. So overall, I think Call by the Grave is almost like a staple in every deck, just because of how absurd this card is, going first or second. So that's just something that to keep in mind. And then lastly, for the last 4 cards in the main deck, I played the 1 copy of Terraforming, obviously, the 1 set rotation, and then 2 copies of Mystic Mine. So these cards are, like, I don't want to say like the main part of the deck, but they are definitely huge factors of this deck's existence for me today. When I was making this deck, I had to figure out a way or find a deck that was able to just like beat all of the meta right now. And when you're going through all the meta lists from the past, I would say 2 weeks, you look in their main decks and they do not have an out to Mystic Mine, or nor do they have a good way of clearing their own board against Mystic Mine. So I would probably say 3/4 of my wins in game one was just activating this card against Despia, Sword Soul, just ended. And that was like most of my day was Despia and Sword Soul. So you just activate Mystic Mine, and a lot of times they can't out it. Sure, like against Sword Soul, you have to kind of be smart about it because they do play the trap card. So if you stick one mine and then you just tell them, I'm not playing another card the rest of the game, they most of the time should concede because you're just telling them like your deck does not out this card. You know that you have more cards than you do if they're playing, let's say they're playing 40 cards and they did their combo already. A lot of the times you're going to have more cards in the deck than they are. So you just activate Mystic Mine. You don't have to play anything else the rest of the game. You are going to win eventually. Despia, they just don't play an out to this card. Even if they just end on Mirror Jade, they do not play an out. This card will win the game. So you will just win the game immediately. Game one, steal it like it's nothing just from playing this card in your main deck. I cannot believe this card is not seeing more play. I can't believe this card's not being played around more either. So that's just something to keep in mind. Now I'm going to move on to the extra deck real quick. I'm just going to push all this out of the way. I'll do the extra deck and side deck over here. So for the extra deck, we played the 3 copies of Kagari. Then we go pretty straightforward. 3 copies of Hayate. I know this is a little weird, but because we're not playing certain cards like Vect Veiler, we actually have extra space for extra Sky Strikers that may or may not have come up in the rounds. 3 copies of Shizuku. This is pretty standard again. And 1 Kaina, 1 Zeke. This is all fine. I had no complaints with the Sky Striker lineup. For the non-Sky Striker cards, it was 1 Access Code and 1 Dark Charmer. These were fine. They weren't anything crazy. I made Access Code. It ended, like when this hit the board, the game ended. But a lot of the times I never really made it. Dark Charmer, I actually never made, I don't think. Maybe once I made it. And then for the last 2 cards, it was Verte Anaconda and Destiny Hero Phoenix Enforcer. These cards were insane throughout the entire event. Enforcer was just ridiculous. People would just forgot that this card was so good. And yeah, it just really shined throughout the event. Going on to the side deck, we played a lot of back row hate because I was scared of things like Skill Drain or Rivalry of the Warlords just being flipped on me and shotgunned. Especially things like Anti-Spell. So for the Anti-Spell hate, we did play Prankratops and 3 copies of Twin Twister. This was just for Anti-Spell because I didn't want to just get blown out. And after game, once they see I'm playing Sky Striker, you could just blow them out with something like that. And then for the last generic, like back row hate card, was just 1 Harpies. It's just a spell card that just blows everything out. We don't have to worry about it. And then for more generic going second, we just played 3 Dark Ruler. This was mostly for Sword Soul, because a lot of their boards are very wide. They can have like anywhere from like 2 to 4 synchro monsters, and that's really annoying to deal with. So having Dark Ruler is just a 1 card, you just deal with it. Like Dark Ruler, Mystic Mine, that can just end the game. So things like that are just super relevant and just something to keep in mind. Dark Ruler is really good against a matchup like that specifically. This depends on their end board of how they make it, but just something to keep in mind just for extra going second. And then this is where my deck gets a little spicy, I guess. Because a lot of the time when you're playing a deck like this and you make your opponent go first and you win with something with Mystic Mine, right? So let's say you're playing against Despia and you win with Mystic Mine game 1. They know you're playing Sky Striker at this point and they think that you made them go first, so they're going to make you go first next because they think they had the advantage because Despia is naturally good at going second, and even Sword Soul is pretty good at going second because of the Tenyu cards. So what do you do? So because you are side decking and you kind of have to read your opponent for this, I don't really have a good way of, other than saying that, of being able to beat your opponent like mentally. A lot of the times after I beat them game 1 with Mystic Mine, I would side into Triple Dimensional Barrier, Triple Artifact Sanctum, and 1 Scythe. In theory, this worked amazing because I would probably say 4 times in the tournament, I would beat them game 1, game 2, they would make me go first, and I would have this. The issue I was having was this card was glued in my hand. So every time I put these in, I would probably say over half the times I did it, this was stuck in my hand. This and this were glued. I actually didn't see Dasher at all. It was just Celestial and Scythe. It was just ridiculous how much I drew those cards. But overall, I did win games with this. It was just completely absurd. Very good cards. Again, you kind of have to be thinking big forehead, big brain, please, to be able to mind read your opponent if they're going to make you go first. Because if you side these in and then you're going second still, like, yeah, the deck's kind of naturally good at it, but it kind of sucks drawing these because you're just guaranteed dead cards and you have to play through something and then try to stop them the next turn too and then play through that. It's just a big mess pretty much of having dead cards. So overall, this deck was really, really cool. I really enjoyed it. It was very nice playing Sky Striker again. It's one of my favorite decks of all time. So piling again felt really nice, and I'm still figuring out what I'm going to play for the YCS. It might be this. I might switch to something else. I'm not positive yet. But overall, it still feels like this card is not being respected, and you could just steal games with it. So maybe I might just play a deck with this card and not Sky Striker, but I'm not positive yet, and we'll see when the event comes, I guess. But overall, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. This was a really fun deck to play. I can highly recommend it. I feel like this deck is super competitive. It can compete at the tier that is currently being played with Sword Soul and Despia and Elwitch and whatever else is being played right now. So go out and try it for yourself. It's super fun. I love this deck so much. And hopefully you guys subscribe if you haven't already, and I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys.